Hello everyone, this is CounterYolo, bringing you another video talking about Star Trek Online. And today I'm going to go over my top picks for the earnable tanking starships inside of the game. Now most of these starships I'm talking about are earnable because we're able to get Fleet Tier 6 starships inside the game now for free through being able to earn fleet modules through our Tier 6 reputations. And so in this video, I'll go over my top picks for the earnable starships for tanks, 6 for science vessels, and 6 for cruisers. Because we're talking about free-to-play and earnable starships, I will not be covering C-Store nor Lobby and Exchange starships because for the casual player inside the game, you'll have to pay money one way or another in order to get C-Store ships or to get Lobby and Exchange starships, because most people who get Lobby and Exchange starships pay real money and sell master keys or promotion packs on the exchange to get a lot of energy credits to buy one of these Lobby or Exchange starships. I'm also not going to be covering ships that are more focused on DPS than anything else, and so these ships like escorts, raiders, warships, destroyers, battlecruisers, etc., invariants inside those types of things, as well as carriers, because I think carriers are really stupid. I will not be covering those inside of this video. I will cover 6 for science and 6 for cruisers. Some of these cruisers happen to have hangars. They're typically just one, and they still have stats with everything else that the hangars don't actually matter for tanking. And yeah, when I come from for my top 6 for each one of these for science and then for cruisers, keep in mind this list in priority is different than the various lists that I've given out previously on Google spreadsheets for normal tanks and for science tanks. The reason for this is because in the Google spreadsheets, those were a lot more of the theory based on the fact and assuming that you would, pay as much as possible to get the most optimal builds and things with consoles from C-stores and stuff to make those ships insanely strong. And this list is assuming that you're a free-to-play player only, and you're only getting stuff from reputation, missions, and earning stuff just inside the game itself, not buying stuff off of the exchange or from the C-store. As thus, this order for the top 6 for science, top 6 for cruisers will differ in many aspects than what will be on that spreadsheet. That spreadsheet link will be in the description alongside the time codes for the rest of the stuff in this video. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So first off, how we earn Fleet Tier 6 starships. There's 3 basic steps to this. First off, you need to get access to be able to buy Fleet Starships in the first place. There's no point in getting tons of Fleet credits and Fleet modules if you can't actually buy a starship. So first off, you need to join and stay in a fleet and get to the appropriate rank in a fleet to be able to purchase Fleet Starships. That is up to the admiralty of whatever, and basically whoever's in charge of whatever fleet that you want to be a part of. In terms of how much fleet contributions, how much participation and time, you need to be a part of a fleet in order to get to an appropriate rank to buy ships from your fleet. Once you have the appropriate rank, you need to get enough fleet credits and fleet modules to be able to buy whatever ship that you're wanting. Fleet credits you earn just from contributing to various fleet projects on your fleet or inside your armada. However, if you contribute to stuff inside your armada, the total fleet credit contribution does not show up in your normal fleet totals, just as an FYI. For earning fleet modules, there's 2 ways to do so. There's the classic way of just buying them off of the C-store or buying them off of the exchange. The better way, with the Age of Discovery expansion, the better way is to just earn them through reputation through your Tier 6 reputations. In my opinion, this is the biggest improvement with Tier 6 reputations in the game, is that now free-to-play players can get Fleet Tier 6 starships now, or Tier 6 starships in general that you don't have to fully rely upon random times of ships being given out or certain events inside the game like the winter and summer event. Now you actually can earn fleet modules and get the type of ship that you want inside the game. Once you get a reputation to Tier 6, you have an optional project that you can slot, and fill with 100 reputation marks, which will give you a fleet module. You only get 1 fleet module per reputation. At the moment, there are 12 reputations in the game, so you can earn 12. And most of your fleet tier 6 starships cost 5 fleet modules. If you happen to have the C-Star version of that ship that you're wanting to get the fleet tier 6 version of, then it only costs you 1 fleet module. The raw price of what it is will be shown in your fleet shipyard whenever you're about to buy the ship. It'll show you how much that it actually costs for you. Also keep in mind that the ability to buy certain starships will also depend upon how high your fleet military is of whatever fleet that you've decided to join or have been a part of for a while. Most of your strong cruisers inside the game are at military 2 and 4. Most of your strong science vessels are at military 3 and 5. The same thing goes with a lot of your really strong DPS ships start getting strong at tier 4 in terms of ones that are actually available to you. There's a lot more available to you at tier 5 as well. Again, 20,000 fleet credits and 5 fleet modules for tier 6 starships. So, with all that said, let's go ahead and get into my personal tier list for the top science starships inside the game for tanking. Keep in mind, as I said before, this is based upon if you're a free-to-play player and do not have access to the C-Store ships and modules and stuff. Because of that, the Fleet Tier 6 long-range science vessel is number 6 on my list. It's not that this is a bad ship, it's just that without the ablative armor console, this ship is not as strong as other ships in this list. Now, this is for me as a tank with a tanking perspective. This ship is quite a bit faster than many of the ships in this list, and so if you go from a full DPS perspective, this ship can outperform in terms of speed and different other factors if you're able to pilot effectively still, even without the ablative armor. But for the casual player, the ship is not going to be as strong as the other ships in this list, plus the fact that it costs a tier 5, it needs a tier 5 military in order to get, which if you're a brand new player, you might not be part of a really old fleet that has access to tier 5 military, so this ship will probably be out of sights for a lot of you anyway. A better ship is a Nautilus temporal science vessel. You only need tier 2 military, especially if you're a DPS captain. This is extremely optimal for you because you have the potential to basically just have temporal operative, science, and tactical seats if you so choose. With 5 science and 4 tactical consoles, with molecular reconstruction, this can be an exotic damage energy weapon beast inside of the game. Not a very cool looking ship in my opinion, but a very powerful ship nonetheless. My number 4 is the experimental science vessel. Tier 3 military proficiency is what you need. Some of the stuff over here is cool too. The biggest thing though is the hyper advanced quantum slipstream drive here in my opinion, alongside its other raw stats too. Especially for those of you that want to do tour of the galaxy really quickly. For free-to-play players, this is your best ship to do so. There are some other ships in the game that are slightly better from the exchange, but they're from the exchange and not really accessible much to free-to-play players. The ship is really strong alongside that additional bonus alongside it, so with that utility alongside its comparable stuff to other ships in this list, I personally put it at number 4. My number 3 is the Fleet Scryer Intel Science Vessel. Slightly lower stats, but to compensate for that, it's got a decent turn rate. And additionally, it also has a cloak, which is pretty powerful. It's also at tier 2 military proficiency, and so even your really young fleets are able to still have this type of really strong ship available to them as well. As a side note, this ship was released in 2014 with the Delta Rising expansion in Star Trek Online. We've had 2.5-ish expansions since then. This ship design was out way before the concepts of anything for Star Trek Discovery came out. If I was a betting person, I'm not, but I'm just going to say this just in case. This design with the open area inside the saucer, I personally feel was gave inspiration to what would eventually become the crossfield class inside of Star Trek Discovery, and what we have in the Age of Discovery with the USS Discovery now. That's just my personal opinion, but I think there's, if someone wanted to look that up, there probably is a lot of decent weight behind that too. Anyway, my number 2 for science vessels is the Fleet Tier 6 research vessels. Each faction gets one of these. They're basically tankier science vessels that have slower turn rate. Which, having a slower turn rate is a really big deal for science vessels, because your arcs to do your science abilities is fairly narrow. It's typically 135 degrees is what that arc is in the front of your ship, is what you need to be able to do any of your science or temporal operative abilities, which is pretty important for most ships that are trying to do science abilities. Because you only have 2 tactical consoles, you have to lean into exotic damage almost exclusively in order to be effective on these ships, but you have the tankiness to be able to withstand a lot of stuff inside the game. If you're a KDF captain, this is probably the ship that you should be going for, unless you're wealthy enough to get stuff off of the exchange. Just going to throw that out there. It's tier 3 military provisioning for these. Same cost and everything. It's a strong DPS science vessel for exotic damage with a really strong hull versus other ships on this list. However, there's one pseudo-science vessel that is better for tanking than the rest of these on this list. And that's the tier 6 Fleet Narendra, released a couple of months ago. You need tier 3 military provisioning to get this, which isn't insanely hard to get. A little bit harder than tier 3, but it's not like tier 4 and tier 5, which a lot of fleets don't have inside the game, even still. A lot of your really young or really low population fleets won't have access to stuff higher than tier 3. Because of its low turn rate, along with molecular reconstruction for its power, this is not an ideal cruiser for beam tanking, because you'll have a turn rate lower than 6 if you're going to try to be a beam tank on this ship. However, as a science tank with the science thing for molecular reconstruction, this thing is especially potent for a science tank inside the game. You are short 1 science console, so it's not going to be, your super hard hitting science DPS that you would have on any of your other science vessels. But if you're going for a science tank, especially for a free-to-play player, nothing really beats this ship. Just saying. It's a very, very strong ship. So let's go ahead and get into my second section, which is Fleet Tier 6 tanking starships. These are the ones that are your beam tanks. That's what I'm really talking about here. My number 6 is the Fleet Tier 6 Exploration Cruiser. Basically the Galaxy class from Star Trek The Next Generation. Of all the tanks inside the game, this is the ship that has the highest hull ratio of all the tanks in the game with command distract fire. There are ships in the game that have a higher hull ratio, yes. There aren't any ships in the game with a higher hull ratio that has command distract fire. For this combination of command distract fire plus a high hull ratio, no other ship beats this ship. I can confidently tell that to you all right now. There is cool stuff from the C store, but that's really why you pick this ship. If you want insane hull ratios, insane hull numbers, this is the ship for you. My number 5 is the Fleet Sagittarius Temporal Cruiser. It's got a lot of temporal operative powers, so it's got some unique stuff for control abilities. You do need tier 4 military provisioning for it. Fortunate, but it's just the way it is. It's got most cruiser commands. It's got all of them except for the one that increases your turn rate. Outside of that one, it's got the other 3, so it's got all you'd ever really want. It's really weird that it has a lot of temporal operative, because beam tanks aren't really known for doing a lot of temporal operative cool shenanigans, but it is there in case you want to try to switch that in with your beam abilities. It does have a decent survival console from the C-Store, but it's kind of meh. And like the real reason you would buy the C-Store variant of this ship instead of the Fleet Tier 6 is if you're going for the trait called Shield Overload. The Sagittarius Temple Cruiser has Shield Overload as its starship trait, so if you wanted a ship from the C-Store and you're wanting that trait, this is actually a ship that you would go for. But anyway, the number 4 in this list is the Fleet Tier 6 Advanced Heavy Cruiser. You only need Tier 3 military provisioning for this, which is pretty nice. Despite the fact that the bridge officer seating is really awkward with 8 commander bridge officer seats, there is ways to work around it. It has full cruiser commands. It also has the advanced transwarp drive. The biggest thing actually going for this ship, though, is that despite the fact that it has a really high hull ratio, it has an extremely small ship profile considering the really high hull ratio. In another video, I'll probably talk about why ship profiles matter inside the game, especially when it comes to doing DPS or doing threat, those different types of things. At the TLDW of whenever that video is going to come out, is that the smaller your ship profile, the better that your overall ship performance is going to be inside the game. It's just going to be the way it is, and because it's a really small profile, despite its really high hull, this is a very, very strong ship. Okay, it's just a strong ship. Alright, with that all said, let's go to the next ship, which is the Fleet Tier 6 Assault Cruisers. Slightly bigger, comparable hull and shield ratios to the Excelsior. This ship has better bridge officer seating. That's what it comes down to. It's a better bridge officer seating for the compensation that you now have to get a Tier 5 military in order to get these ships. The reason why these are Tier 5 military is because you have the potential option to use a 3-piece Starfleet Assault Cruiser technology set with this ship, which allows for this ship to be one of the few cruisers in the game to have command extract fire with a battle cloak. That's really powerful. Okay, this is very, 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 very powerful. You do need Tier 5 military in order to get the full stuff with this. Otherwise, your shield ratio is going to be just too low for it to all work properly. It also has 4 tackle consoles, so you'll still do a lot of decent damage along with this. So you could have a tactical. You could have a DPS cruiser with a battle cloak if you wanted to build around that, and it would still perform pretty well. The only difference between these two ships is the Lieutenant Commander Universal is either a command on the command version or an intel on the intel version. Other than that, it's literally the exact same ship. Alright, so number 2 in this list is the Tier 6 Advanced Light Cruiser. I've talked about this on several other videos prior. This ship is just insanely good. I don't know why it's in military 2 or tier 2 military. This ship is insanely good. Especially for a free-to-play player, this is an insanely good ship. If you're a DPS player, this is an insanely good ship. As long as you're okay with broadsiding, this is a very, very good ship. You have full cruiser commands as well, so you can do everything that they want with this ship. This is overall the most maneuverable free-to-play cruiser in the entire game. It has manageable tank-based stat thresholds here for hull and shield, so you don't have to worry about that. Really high turn rating, so you can do broadsiding really easily. Not to mention it has a pilot bridge officer seat. That is huge. All the other cruisers with command track fire, from what I can tell inside the game, you have to get off of the exchange in order to get a pilot bridge officer seat. So the fact that you don't have to with this one, and it's also free to play, combined with everything else, this is an extremely strong ship. Very, very, very strong ship inside the game. But for my number 1, and for those of you that have watched this channel for a while, you know exactly what my number 1 is going to be. It is the Flight Deck Assault Cruisers. Even without the special console off of the C-Store, these are still, in my opinion, the best free-to-play tanks inside the game. The biggest reason why you don't see a lot of DPS players playing these ships is, one, these only have defensive cruiser commands, so it doesn't have weapon system efficiency, which most of your DPS players who use cruisers prefer to have for cruiser command things. Not to mention, even though this is a ship with 5 weapons in the front and 3 in the back, these ships do not have access to dual heavy cannons to be able to use them. Especially a lot of DPS players nowadays like to use dual heavy cannons, so the fact that you can't use dual heavy cannons and it doesn't have weapon system efficiency pushes a lot of your main DPS high-end crowd away from these ships. Outside of that crowd, these are really strong DPS ships. These are really strong tank ships with really high ratios inside the game. Pretty versatile bridge officer seating, in my opinion. Pretty good turn rate considering that they're cruisers, and their hull and shield ratios considering all that too. Really, the biggest thing going against these ships besides those two things is the looks. They're drastically different looks, but especially if you're wanting a different look for a starship, different letter stuff in the front, these ships can definitely give you a lot of unique stuff for it too. For the Romulan ship, it's also unique in that it's a battle cloak ship, but it has a regular warp core, which makes the battle cloak exceptionally strong. I might cover in a different video really quickly as to why a warp core with battle cloak is exceptionally strong in terms of its scaling and things, but I might just cover that later. Because of that, the Romulan version still has the defensive cruiser commands that the other ships have, and so that's why the Romulan ship is still included here as well. When it comes to this stuff here, you do need a tier 4 military to get, which is a little unfortunate, but it's still good regardless. You can do broadsiding or the forward firing method that I highly recommend. It's overall just a really tanky ship with good DPS, and there's a lot of unique looks for these ships in general. So yeah, that's basically it for this video. Thank you all for watching. Feel free to like and subscribe if you like this type of content. Feel free to comment below in terms of different things that you liked or didn't like in this video, clarifications that you like to have, maybe ratios that I messed up on in terms of ships in this list. Feel free to clarify down below as well. There are a few things that I'm working on for the future that I will have within a few weeks. My lore videos won't probably start up until January just because that's taken a long time to go through those thousands of posts that Cryptic has put out over the past 10 years. But it is coming, and it is progressing. But yeah, besides all that, thank you all for watching, and enjoy the rest of your day.